Craigslist free. Get them running again. 2012, 10,000 corrosion. Looking pretty sad. Horn, thick moss, rust there. Cats.
Look at her sparkle. Spiders. She's free.
Right now.
Ooh, it smells so good.
It smells horrible. Corrosion. Just turning. It's very rusty. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rust. Corroded. Corrosion. A fuel pump. Corroded canister. Nothing. Oh God. The rest. This is our fuel tank. Should be okay. Idle. Alright, so it's next weekend. I don't get much time to work on this during the week, but my dad got bored and he came out here and spent some time cleaning. Polished up the top of the carbs a little bit. Just kind of spent time scrubbing everything down, and it actually looks a lot better. The carbs look clean from the top side at least, and like the heater box there is a lot cleaner and less rusty looking, and he cleaned up the firewall a little bit and the valve cover. Seems like the theme of it has been like, this stuff looks really bad, but it's actually not that bad. Like the carbs looks pretty bad, but they're not that bad, and the inside of the engine looked pretty good, and the heater box actually is cleaning up surprisingly well, and all the bolts are coming out. I haven't broken any bolts. I haven't had to grind any bolts out. Everything seems to be coming apart nicely. So last week we got it started, and it started up enough that I'm like comfortable. I think the engine is just fine, so we can move on to some other stuff. One of the main things was I had to bypass the ignition because the ignition wasn't starting it. I don't think there's a clutch switch on this, but pressing the clutch didn't seem to make a difference. I only see one set of wires coming out of the master cylinder area over there, and I would assume that's just for brake lights. So like I said, I don't think there's a clutch switch. So just in order to trace that down, if we take a look at the wiring diagram, so basically between the key and the starter, all there is some wires and this relay. And I'm trying to figure out if the relay is good or if I just need to replace the relay. And if the relay is good and all the wiring from the relay to the starter is good, then we know there is a problem either with the ignition or with the wiring from the relay to the ignition. Alright, I know you guys can't see too close here, but essentially the relay just has 4 wires. It has a power and ground, and then it has the signal from the key, and then it has the wire going to the starter. Using the multimeter, I figured out that over here on this side there's the power and ground, so it's a constant power even when the key's off. Then this wire, this brown and white wire, is going directly to the starter, and we can verify that because if we unplug it, we run it over here to this fuse block, or basically we're just putting 12 volts to it, but it's easily accessed right here on this car. This bottom fuse is constant all the ways on, so if I touch this wire, nothing happens, and I'm a liar. So I don't really know what happened there, but it actually works. So this is the line to the starter. If we touch it to 12 volts, the engine turns over. So we know that the line to the starter is good. So if we want to test the relay itself, we plug this back in, and then the signal wire from the key is this one over here. So we just unplug that and put 12 volts to the relay with an alligator clip. So we're hooking up to the relay now, and I'm going to touch the other end of this to the 12 volts. And that still works, so that means the relay is okay. So since the relay is okay, we now have to chase this wire to the key. So why isn't the car sending the signal to the relay? So that would either be like a clutch cancel switch, or maybe the wire is broken, or maybe the ignition is broken, so we're going to have to figure that out now. Alright, so to go further, I need the wiring diagram. And I found this great diagram online. Actually, it's like 35 pages long for all MGBs. I can link it just in case you guys need it, but basically each page is a full car, and I just pulled out the pages that may apply to this car, so 1974. The bottom 2 pages have a seatbelt module, which I'm pretty sure this car does not have because there's no wires on the seatbelts. So I'm going to assume that those 2 pages do not apply to this car, and I'm just going to go to this. Now, if something is weird here, I can go check out the other ones. That's why I pulled out all 3 of the pages. But anyways, so starter right here, we're at starter relay. So WN is brown, white, and N is brown. So WN is white, brown. So that says it's going directly to the starter, which we verified, and it is working. And then the solid brown is the constant 12 volt, which we verified, it's working. And then the W2 here is black, and that's going straight to ground, and I verified that we do have ground. So that leaves W1 as the wire that's going to the ignition, which it is correct here. It does say it's going to the ignition. But this says it's a white with red stripe wire, which does not exist at our relay. So that either means that this wiring diagram isn't exactly correct for this car, or the wiring harness has been messed with here. I mean, basically those are our options. But either way, this is the wire we're looking for, going from W1 here to the ignition switch. So what I'm going to do is open up the steering column and find a wire there off this pin on the ignition switch that is going to give us that signal to see if the switch is working. Alright, over here at the steering column, I've taken the column cover off so that we can see the wires inside there. This is the back of the ignition switch, so the key's on the other side, right there. And the first thing I notice is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pins, not like our wiring diagram. Our wiring diagram showed 4 pins. Second thing I notice is we do have a white with red on here, like the wiring diagram said we should have. So I'm going to go back to the wiring diagram and make sure I'm looking at the right one. Alright, so we're looking here for this red wire, but the ignition switch here has, oh look, it says 1, 2, 3, 5, but it only shows 4 pins. I don't know what that is about. But if we go down to the next diagram and we look, ignition switch shows 5 pins and then an extra ground in pink on that one, and then this one is the same. But either way, the W1 is now yellow and pink, which is what is on this car, yellow and pink, and the ignition we have red, white, which is what is on this car. So where are those going? Follow them down, 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 down to the seatbelt module. So maybe this car does have a seatbelt module. So let me find out where that is. Alright, so progress. So I went online looking for where the seatbelt module is, and people are saying that it's up above the radio, and I don't want to dig that whole thing out and get there, and I think people are just normally bypassing it anyways because they fail. That's what I'm going to do. So I got some extra wire and ran it from the steering column all the way up. So I found a spool of wire here, and I just ran one up under the dash along with the factory harness. So it's right next to the factory harness. So it comes from that side across with the factory harness, this black wire here, and then I put a little grommet in the firewall right there. There was actually already a hole there. For what? I have no idea, but it's mine now. And then that wire comes out right there and comes around with the factory harness to the relay. And then I just put another female spade connector on there, and it's plugged right into the relay. So I'll come and tighten all this up with zip ties or whatever and have it running right with the factory harness the whole way. Alright, so our connection has been made. I just used one of the heat shrink solder connections, little butt connectors. I love these things. They work really well. So now our connection is made and the key should work. Key works. So that problem is solved. It's pretty cool. So now basically I could get rid of my whole like remote start switch and all that junk. And I'll zip tie all this up here, put the column cover back on, and we're ready to move on to the next problem. Alright, so the next item on the list is all the electrical, getting a battery in here. I was using another battery that I had that was just for another project, but it doesn't fit in here. But my dad found this battery from a friend for free, and it actually happens to fit in this battery tray pretty perfectly, although it's pretty snug. I think it's one size bigger than it should be, but it should work. The power cable and the ground cable were not looking very good, and that's part of the reason I was having trouble starting the car before, just because the power cable was so corroded and the positive battery terminal was so corroded. So I wanted to replace that, and I have some car audio wire left over from years ago, previous projects, so I'm just using that. So this is what I'm going to install, is 1/0 car stereo wire basically, which is way overkill for this, but it is free, and that's my favorite price. So the cables I installed, this was an old ground I had out of another car. It was already terminated and crimped and everything, and then I just installed a new bolt right there and cleaned up all the metal. So this is chassis ground. It's only about a foot long, and then power cable. Just replaced the stock cable, and it's coming in a different direction because the battery is pretty large for the hole, and the battery even came with terminals on it, so these will work just fine. You can see it barely fits in there. I'll hook this up later, but it works now. So let me show you underneath. And power going down the back here to coming out the back, and then I have it Adele clamped to the side of the battery box so that it doesn't swing around at all. And then it just travels through the stock locations up under these brackets and across this frame rail. But I still need to terminate the cable for the starter, but I ran out of lugs, so I need to do that right now, finish that up, and then this car should be self-sufficient electrically and no longer need jump starts and things like that. All right, so I also got a Brakemaster cylinder here that we can install later because the brake pedal is completely hard, and then some new brake hoses because the other ones are pretty blown out. These are the carb bowl seals, so we can stop the carbs from leaking. And my dad wants to help install the brake hoses, so he's gonna do that while I work on the electrical. All of them are splitting like this. All right, so we got one installed here. I think he's working on the rear still. It looks like it's good now. Rear brake hose good. And then I finished up the battery cable all the way up to the starter, hooked in there where the stock one was hooked up, and all cleaned up, no more corrosion. So now I'm just gonna work on this engine ground, which is right down there, connected to this top of the starter, and then it comes up and connects here. So I'm gonna replace that with some more old stereo wire. Here's a stereo wire that I'm replacing the engine to chassis ground with. There's another piece of 1/0 that was a ground in a previous car, so it's just gonna be a ground in this one. It's probably a little too long, but we'll make it fit. Just wanna check inside these and see what they look like. They're probably not gonna fix anything, but let's look. That one. There we go. A little oily in there. Is that just from spraying the
Could be also
front?
take a look at the wheel cylinder if it's around the wheel cylinder.
Don't see any oil there. This must be just from spraying the lugs with penetrant. They look used but not spent. They look okay. And this doesn't look too bad. It's fine. I'll have to measure it, clean it up a little bit, and put it back together. And check out the other side. These pads look the same as the other side. They're used but not totally spent. So, and then the drum, I'll just clean that up a little bit with Scotch-Brite or something and put it back together, but it should be good for now. The other car did have that full kit, like to rebuild the rear brakes in it, so I don't know if there may be something wrong here that I'm not seeing, like that's not leaking or anything, so we might just have a brake kit for later on. All right, so last night we finished up all three of those brake hoses. My power cable is completed right there. Front brakes got cleaned up. Ready for the rebuild?
Ready for the rebuild. Almost as good as a DuPont overhaul.
Sprayed them down with brake clean. They're nice and dry. Rear brakes, I need to go buy another can of brake clean so I can clean those, but they'll be fine. I got the ground cable changed out so you can see it right in there. Nice new clean connection there, cleaned down at the starter. I also cleaned up the connections on the coil here because they were looking pretty bad. So that should be good to go now. So the last couple things that we need to address before we can drive are fuel. So this is the fuel line from the tank. So I need to put a filter, inline filter, and make line come around and come into the carb there. And then that rear carb is leaking from the bowl. So I got bowl seals, and I think I'm just going to try to replace that bowl seal with the carb still in there, so I don't have to take this all out, just so that we could drive it. And then we'll take them out and clean them up more later. And then the last thing will be Brakemaster Cylinder, and then bleed brakes. So those two things, fuel and brakes, and then we should be able to drive it. Oh, also the air filters, these air boxes are looking really nasty. So I mean, the filters themselves don't look too bad. They look like they could be used, but those boxes need to be cleaned up. So either we'll just drive it without air filters the first time, or I'll have to spend some time cleaning those. All right, for the fuel system here, I'm gonna start up here and work my way back to the tank. So let's get this bowl off and see if we can fix the leak. There we go. It was leaking over on this side. Kind of some junk in there. Maybe I should take the other one off and clean it too. I used a mirror and looked up inside the carb and didn't see anything bad in there. It's pretty clean up in there. So just clean these up, put new seals, and we'll be good to go. All right, clean and ready to go. So I'm gonna throw those back on there. All right, so got some new fuel line in there, new filter, inline filter, so we can see what's going on, and then new fuel line all the way up into the carb, and our carb bowls have been resealed, so hopefully there's no more leaks there. So let's go back to the fuel tank. All right, so you're looking at the fuel tank right here, and this is the fuel sender and the fuel pickup tube. I wanted to know, well, I came down here to reconnect the fuel pump, and then I just tapped on the tank, and it sounds super empty. And I know the owner said that it was, I'm pretty sure he said it was cleaned a few years ago. So I'm gonna pull this sender out and just take a little peek inside, see if it's clean or not. Seems like it's absolutely empty, which is good. Pickup looks clean. Everything looks clean. Got an extra gasket on there. Not sure where that's supposed to go. Fuel sender and pickup out. You can see it's pretty clean. Not a whole lot of mess there on the filter. There's this random extra gasket hanging off the float there. So we'll just leave that out, I guess. We can plug this thing back in and test if the fuel gauge works. I do want to look inside the tank and see what that looks like. I don't know what that thing is hanging down. That's weird. It doesn't look like clean, but it doesn't look like crazy rusty or anything. So hopefully our inline filter will be enough to handle this. And I'm just gonna throw some fuel in it and we'll see how far we get with it. So I put the gas in, and now I'm gonna see if the fuel pump's gonna make noise. Yep. So I'm gonna turn it on, and we're just gonna watch the fuel filter there and see if it starts filling up. Oh, it got quiet, like it picked up some fuel. And we're filling up. They're gonna stop. We have any leaks? I don't see any drips. Fuel pump's still trying though. I don't see any leaks under the car either. Fuel pump's a little noisy. I've never used one of these style pumps before, so I don't really know what it's supposed to sound like, but I don't see any leaks. So I'm just gonna call that good for now. I would start it, but I've got the oil filter off, and I was trying to put the new one on, but when I thread the new one on, it just doesn't go smooth, and it gets to a point where it kind of stops, and like, this is the last thing that I want to force onto the engine. And if I'm looking at the threads, which I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but they don't really look awesome. And then like compared to these threads on the old ones, like these look decent. These are just like kind of squared off and a little gross looking. So I'm wondering if somebody put this filter on another car before I bought it and messed it up and returned it. So I'm gonna take the filter back to the store and look at the other ones they have and see if there's a difference, and hopefully I can get another one that looks a little bit better, and then I can finish the oil change. And then what else do we got on the list? Still need to do the master cylinder, still need to bleed the master cylinder, clean and reassemble rear brakes, we did that. Look inside fuel tank, did that. Carbold gaskets, did that. Fuel filter and line, did that. Reconnect fuel pump, did that. Fill fuel tank, did that. We're in the middle of the oil change, didn't do that. Fill coolant, I still need to do that, and I still need to tighten the battery. So let me do those right now before I go to the parts store. So this is how it's looking right now. There's some gunk in there, but I'm just gonna fill it up and run it, and we'll see what happens. And then this cap, I think it's missing its secondary seal, and it's really difficult to take on and off. So I bought a new cap, just a 10-pound, and it fits really good, 2 seals. And then I do need to come up with some sort of overflow tank. So I got back from the parts store, and I got a MicroGuard oil filter. If I put the old Fram filter back on, it spun on just fine, but when I tried to put the wicks on there, it just wouldn't go, and I didn't want to force it. And so I went to the parts store and I was looking at, he brought all the wicks they had out of the back, and all the threads on them looked bad. So I got a MicroGuard one, and it threaded on just fine. So for some reason the threads on all the wicks filters were messed up. So there's a MicroGuard filter on it now. I put new oil in it. It should be ready to start on its own now. The only thing is I still haven't done the Brakemaster, so I need to do that before we drive it. But right now it should be able to start from inside the car. We still don't have a choke cable, I think, but it's pretty hot, so we shouldn't really need it today. And we're also running off the fuel from the tank, and I've got actually like leaded 100 octane from the airport that we had laying around here that I put a few gallons in it, so it should be happy with that. So hopefully it'll run off its own tank, carbs aren't leaking. Yeah, let's see what happens. Well, that was pretty clear that it's definitely misfiring. It won't idle anymore. Honestly, the spark plugs and the wires are in pretty bad shape, so that's probably why. So I'll probably need to take a look at that. It won't idle anymore, but I think that's just because it's not running an all cylinders thing. I don't necessarily know if it's a carb thing, although I don't think the carbs are tuned anywhere near close to where they should be. Yeah, we got some more work to do here, but at least it starts and runs off its own tank, and the fuel coming through doesn't look bad, so that's a really good sign. All right, so to take care of this Brakemaster cylinder, it's got this cover on the front right here because the pedals are coming up through the floor, so this cover makes it so that the air can't like go down into your feet area. I think that the master cylinder has been leaking for a while, which has caused all of this to become corroded and rusty, and only one of those 4 screws came out, so I'm gonna be fighting with the other 2, trying to get all 4 of those out. I think the other ones back there those are actually for the bracket that holds the Brakemaster itself. I don't think those will be too much of an issue since they're Allen head, but these others are like Phillips screws, and I'm probably gonna have to grind them, but like that one way back there, I'm not gonna be able to get a grinder in there, so we might be here a while, but I'll figure it out. So I got 3 of the screws out with just grinding a groove in it and then using a flat blade screwdriver on them, and then this last one way up here in the corner. I tried some easy outs, but they weren't working, and I have some reverse drill bits, but they're too short to get in here. The reverse drill bits won't fit, so I just use a regular drill bit, and then I put the screwdriver on it again, and the head just busted off, so now we can get the cover out. But that means that I have 3 holes with good threads, and then 1 with the bolt shaft still stuck in it. I was attempting to start pulling the brake lines out and the clutch line, but this one broke free just fine. That one broke free out of the master cylinder, but the line is glued to the nut, so if I keep turning it, I'm probably gonna break the line. Same on the clutch side. So I put some penetrating oil and I was letting him sit, and then I started taking the pedals out, so the clutch out and then the brake. And then when I loosened the big hinge bolt, the brake pedal moved. So now the pedal is actually moving free. So it was like this hinge bolt that was stopping the pedal from returning. Now it comes back just fine, and the return spring isn't even installed. So that's just the master cylinder pushing it back. So maybe now we'll try to bleed it and see what happens. So I put some brake fluid in here, and I'm just gonna pump the pedal to see if it's gonna take any fluid in. If it is taking fluid in, then we can try to just bleed this master cylinder. Looks like it's just making a big mess, and the rear isn't taking any fluid. All right, I don't really remember where I left off here. I think it was a couple weekends ago. So I have since gotten the whole brake and clutch master setup out of the car, and you can see that area is like pretty surface rusty. So I'm gonna try to clean it up a little bit, wire brush and some paint that's meant to deal with rust, and hopefully would just stop the rust. I'm not trying to restore the thing right now, just trying to get it running. So yes, brake and clutch master are out. They're right here in this one unit together, and I have a new Brakemaster. But last weekend I was pretty busy. I picked up that, so I'll be doing videos on that in a bit. That's the next project. And also went and picked up all the spare parts from the guy that gave me the MGs. Very happy to have all this stuff. He gave me a bunch of stuff, mainly a set of wire wheels. There's a full set here, under here. They're not in the best shape, but they are wire wheels, and I think that you can clean up. I've seen people have good luck with just blasting them and having them powder coated without even taking them apart. So if we do want to run those, that's probably the direction we'll go. And then another set of the regular steel wheels that are actually in pretty decent shape. Still none of the beauty rings though. On this car, we only have 2 wheels with the chrome trim rings. So we're missing 2 still. And then also he gave me a rear axle that is set up with the splines for the wire wheels, and a pair of front hubs for wire wheels, and then just a bunch of boxes of other stuff. There's a lot of carbs for the 75, which is the Stromberg carb. Another pair of SU carbs. I think these are earlier with the bowl off to the side. There's manifolds and air boxes and alternators. More air box. There's a whole transmission. He said he doesn't know the condition on the transmission or the rear end. Let's see what's here. More carbs. Those are Strombergs. And then we got fuel stuff. Here's another sender, which, oh, that one looks pretty good. If the other sender doesn't work, maybe I'll toss this one in, but it does look used, so it may be already broken. Lots of gaskets, and oh, here's some windshield wipers used. Here's the knockoffs for the wheels. Beautiful. And what else is in here? More knockoffs. There's a lot, actually. Might be more than 4 in there. That's some of the smog stuff, probably off the red car. Fuel sender, lock ring, and gasket. We've got some stickers. Those are for the steel wheels when you're painting them, so you can mask off and do the silver centers like they do on those wheels. And then exhaust manifolds, intake manifolds. There's a couple pairs of those for different carb setups. Factory jack. There, factory jack, another carb. So lots of stuff. So that'll be nice. And also a soft top for the red car, which he says has a couple flaws on it. He said he thinks it's coming apart in some spots, but we'll clean it up and see if it's usable at all. The frame is a little rusty and a little tweaked, but we'll see if we can make it work. And so for the brakes, I do have a new master cylinder, but all this stuff, this whole frame is rusty. This is like the cover for the brakes, and here's the pedals. They're pretty rusty. And then this is the stock air box that was on it, and it's, not looking great. I don't really want to suck all that paint and rust and crap into the engine, so we need to do something with these. And in the parts he gave me, there's another set of air boxes that are in a bit better shape. Nice on the outside, Inside a little bit rusty because I think they may have been outside and they had got some water into them, but basically use these 2 sets of air boxes and piece together the best that I can. And we may need to sandblast a little bit, which is what I spent last weekend doing when I went to pick up that thing. What I had been doing before was we have this sandblaster back here that was given to us. It's a 4-foot wide sandblaster, and so Saturday I spent the day going through it to make it work. So my favorite part is I went to Harbor Freight and got a 4-foot light bar and then just cut a hole in the side here. So we got that, and now it's very bright. So there's a light bar all the way across the top, and from factory there's just that one little bulb there, and so it's pretty dim. So now we have this whole thing is very bright all the way across. If you've used sandblasters before with a single light, you know that shadows are really annoying. You can't see, and then you'll think you're done with the part, you'll take it out, and then you missed a spot because it was in a shadow or something. But so that's nice having the light bar all the way across. And then I just got some Harbor Freight gloves, even though they're the wrong size, and some big old clamps, and put those on there. So new gloves. And then the gun I think it works and should be good, and it's powered by a little foot pedal, which is pretty cool. The ones I've used before, they just have a trigger on the gun, and then that gets full of sand and whatever, and then it's, you know, I like the foot pedal a lot better. And then this one also has a dust extractor, so it's a vacuum. It pulls into there. There's a filter between the top and bottom, and then there's a motor here that blows all the air out on the top here. I kind of want to put this thing outside because I think it's going to be annoying. It's going to be loud, and it's going to spray the silica dust everywhere, which you don't want to breathe. So I may end up putting it outside, but we're going to test it inside first. And then I also put a new piece of glass in here. So this thing is set up and ready to go to finish up those brake parts and the air boxes. So that's my next thing. I'm gonna start basically just wash all those parts, so that you wanna wash them first so that you don't end up with a bunch of extra crap in your sandblaster, because all that sand, after you use it, when you shoot it, it all goes down at the bottom there. You can see a bunch of crap in there already. So the cleaner your parts are when you put them in here, the longer your sand will last, and it'll just work better. So I'm gonna wash all those parts as best I can, and then get them in here to blast them, paint, and then the car can go back together, and hopefully we can drive it. Alright, so here's how it came out. I mean, there's some spots left, but I was getting bored and didn't want to spend any more time in the blaster, and, you know, good enough. I'm just going to paint these real quick, and the pedals actually have a greased, looks like a bronze bearing, so I need to take those out and grease them up, make them nice, and I don't know, maybe I do that after I paint it. I haven't decided yet. So I got this whole Brakemaster area cleaned up, and I painted it with Rust-Oleum, Rust Reformer. It looks a lot better. It'll stop the rust for a little while, but eventually probably you're gonna have to come in here again with something. But since the car is red and the engine bay is blue, I figured why not just like go the rest of the way and try and eliminate some of the blue in the engine bay, and then eventually we'll work all the way around and have the whole engine bay be black, which I think the other car is already black. It'll match better this way. So this morning I was able to put the whole brake and clutch master together and get that into the car with some new bolts and stuff. Kind of cleaned out those threads, put some new bolts in there. So now I need to put the pedals in and this whole hinge pin that the pedals hinge on, and then grease that up so they're moving smoothly. The brake rod back in, and then we should be almost ready to bleed it up. Here's the pedals, some fresh paint on them. And I need to grease these bearings. There's little bushings in there. And then the pedal box cover. This one I did gloss. Doesn't really matter, but it looks nice. And then these are the pedal return springs. And then that's the brake rod. All right, we're getting closer. So I have brake and clutch master in, all lines are hooked up, and the pedals are now in. Basically now I can fill everything with fluid and start bleeding. And then last thing is air boxes. Once I get those on, then we can test drive. All right, air boxes are all painted, ready to go. Just gonna put those together, put them in the car with these used air filters. I'll just pick the best one. I think it's these two. Hopefully today we get a first drive out of it. Last time I started it, it had a little bit of an ignition problem, so we might have to do those plugs and mess with the distributor a little bit, but we'll find out once the other stuff's back together. I think we're ready to take it off the jacks, but I'm gonna try to start it. Brakes are all bled, time for a first drive. So hopefully we make it out of its parking space here. Yep. Are you ready for first ride?
Yep. Oh, no.
Whoa. Whoa. We got the auto recline. All right, that's a neutral.
Good job.
Got a clutch, got a brake pedal. That's the fuel pump.
That just turned right over.
Yeah,
and you hear her?
Good. Oh, look, our fuel gauge works. Good. Our gas gauge works.
Dang.
Idle's a little too low, so I gotta hold my foot on it.
On the clutch?
On the gas.
On the gas.
So that it doesn't die, because I let off. So that's me. I gotta put my foot back on it.
How do we fix that?
I gotta adjust the carbs. That's oil pressure, and that's very low, but we're just gonna go with it. Get into reverse. Whoa!
What?
We got a transmission.
Oh.
Got reverse.
Woo!
What?
You hear her? Is it normally supposed to sound like that, or is it like extra toots?
It's a little louder than normal because the muffler's rusted out, but.
I like it. What are you doing?
Oh, we're in first. Oh, we dropped out of first.
How come?
I don't know.
Did you want?
Oh, we got brakes.
Yeah.
We got brakes.
You didn't know we had brakes?
Well, you got to test on them. What if they didn't work?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, how are you going to find out if they work if you don't test them?
Like in the shop?
Well,
I feel like we're on, this is like the real Indiana Jones one. Like it sounds just like it, you know?
Transmissions may be questionable. Maybe that's why we've got an extra transmission, you know?
Yeah.
Go move the camera.
What a drive. Oh, I'm gonna open my little window. Gotta get the right angle. This is my car. So when he's done fixing it, I want you guys to hold him accountable that he is not going to try to take it. Because he will not win that battle, you know?
All right, let's try one more time.
She sounds so good.
Doesn't want to go into first. Wonder if it's the shift linkage. Second's okay.
Is that first?
Oh, you might have a bad transmission. It does not want to go into first. Let's try second. That's reverse. Second. Well, we'll just use second only. How's that?
Woo!
Gotta keep my foot on the throttle, otherwise it dies.
I was gonna joke around and say that I should be the first one to drive it, but I don't think that's a good idea.
Alright, so it won't go into first. It's like, it almost feels like the linkage is messed up. Yeah, as soon as I let the clutch out, it pops it out, doesn't like it, so we're just gonna go in second. Got brakes. Got steering.
Yeah, all right, we do for sure.
All right, let's see what she's got.
Taylor, I do not like that.
Oh, she's already a goer.
You didn't even know if she had brakes 5 minutes ago.
Well, now I know.
Yeah.
It smells like it has no catalytic converters.
So you're already a little fast, you know?
Okay. Oh, I hear some suspension and knocking. Yeah, I hear the knocking.
Yeah, what's up, bro?
I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, it's idling now that it's warm. Oh, not quite. So it's knocking around up here. Oh, maybe it's... No, it sounded like the suspension, didn't it?
Yeah, it sounded like it was like coming from over there.
It's the sway bar right there on the frame making the noise, so it's safe to drive, just noisy. All right, let's keep going. I mean, second is pretty low.
You don't even need first.
Shift into first or third. We can't shift into first or third, which is the front 2 gears, so we only have second and fourth. So I feel like that's probably a linkage problem, so we might have to check out the shift linkage, see what's going on there. We have no speedometer. So we're in fourth now, like that's like 1800 RPM. We have no speedometer. It looks like decent oil pressure. The temperature gauge is pegged, but it's wrong. And the fuel gauge looks like it's actually working.
Woo!
No idea if we're getting caught or not.
Love that.
I'm gonna pull over right here.
Okay. It's fucking hot, isn't she?
That's hot. That's why we like roofs on our cars. Oh, the brakes work.
What's that red thing?
That's saying there's no oil pressure because the engine shut off.
Oh. This is so cool.
We got some alignment problems, we got some suspension problems, we got some carburetor problems. We got some problems, but it runs.
It runs.
A little steamy.
Is she? Where?
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be driving her to work on Monday.
No. Brakes work. Oh yeah, got all the coolant coming out of the radiator there. Oh, it blew it all over. Blew it all over my new paint job. Which we were supposed to, I need to get an overflow. I already knew that, but we blew it everywhere. Anyways, how's your first ride?
It was lovely.
See the boiling.
Does that mean it was too hot?
Not really, because, I mean, it boils at 212, so that's pretty hot. It's hotter than you want it. So yeah, it might be too hot.
He sprayed his fluid all over his new paint job over there earlier.
Yeah, the brake fluid's up. I'm actually kind of trying to wash the brake fluid out right now too.
Ooh, you hear it sizzle.
Yeah, it's hitting the exhaust. It's super cool that we got to drive the car. It's been a few weeks now. I haven't really driven it since because it's been extremely hot here. But I'm pretty happy with it as it is. It starts up super fast. It doesn't have any problem starting. It does have a problem idling, so we do need to adjust the carbs. But the engine bay is looking a lot cleaner. The brakes are working great. We definitely need to go through the cooling system, and I think I need to check more into the oil pressure and make sure that's all good before we move on. But yeah, it looks great. At least the driver's side of the engine bay looks great. My dad actually clay barred the left fender, and you can see the difference between the left and the right. It's like a lot deeper of a color, and it still hasn't even been buffed yet, so I think the paint is going to look pretty good by the time we're done. There's still a lot more to do in the engine area. I did throw the soft top on really quick just to protect the interior while it's sitting out here, but it's not fully bolted in or anything, so we need to go through that and make it all work properly. I just want to drive the thing, so like I want to get it going, but I'm also working on the Model A a little bit, so we'll see how fast I can get to this one. But like I said, I just want to drive it, so hopefully it's soon. So yeah, in the next videos we're just going to keep going through stuff to make it more reliable. So transmission linkage, cooling system, suspension, and then also like seats and the paint and the soft top and all that stuff. So yeah, if you want to see us continue to work on this thing and get it reliable and see it come to life and actually be a nice car, yeah, hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.